want to start by asking that my statement and my questions be entered into the meeting minutes, and I also brought copies to submit to the board as well. And if I do go over time by about 30 seconds, I would appreciate if you guys just permit it, because I've come here with a very important topic, one that I've spoken before, and we have some questions. So on September 14th, I stood before this board, and I questioned your decision to contract Dominion voting machines. At the time, the company was the subject of national election controversy, and they still are to this day. I quoted Commissioner Quinn, who reassured us that your decision would ensure that Ocean County races would continue to be safe and not fraudulent like they were in other parts of the country. It's incomprehensible that there is any acknowledgement of the existence of election irregularities on the national scale by this board, yet when it comes to elections in our own county, in your county, you continue to permit our election board, which answers to you, to deny us transparency and accountability. In my pursuit of truth regarding our elections, I sought to obtain public records from the election board you oversee. I requested footage for all mail-in ballot drop boxes in the county for both the 2020 presidential and the 2021 gubernatorial elections. I requested the records to verify just how secure our elections are in Ocean County. The election board continues to make it exceedingly difficult to obtain these records. As you already know, they are attempting to slap an unfounded $4,000 price tag on records that are typically free to access. You can imagine my surprise, because this election board has been so difficult, but they were very nonchalant in their disclosure that they are blatantly disregarding record retention rules that are designated by both the New Jersey Treasury Department as well as federal statute. So to prevent the illegal destruction of this footage, I was forced to file a complaint with the Superior Court of Ocean County, who has already issued me a temporary order of restraint preventing our election board from destroying these records. The litigation is scheduled to be disposed on February 4th. In the meantime, I did write a letter to everybody on this board with the exclusion of Ms. Crea, because she is new, and I did request assistance with obtaining this footage. In my plea for help, I asked the board other questions. I asked how the Ocean County voters can have faith in the integrity of the ballot boxes when the election board continues to deny the only footage that can substantiate it. And I also asked if the county election board is so confident in the manner in which our local elections are run, why are they refusing to be accountable to us, the voting public? Administrator Block just responded to me on January 12th. And he said that this board is prohibited from replying, responding, or commenting on the content of my letter because they are the subject matter of litigation in the Superior Court, and that communication would be inappropriate. For the purpose of this meeting, I will assume that you're also precluded from communicating why you all agree that $4,000 is an appropriate fee for the election board to charge, which again are typically free. Nonetheless, I would like to remind this board that my litigation is civil in nature, and the scope of its subject matter strictly pertains to the access of public records. Many of us here today have assembled to show that we are educated about the unlawful activity you have permitted our election board to engage in, and we are demanding answers. Today, commissioners, you have a choice. You can choose to hide behind the fact that I have a pending lawsuit, but it will only confirm our suspicions that Ocean County government's transparency issues start at the top with every single one of you. You can try to insult our intelligence by acting like you don't know the difference between a civil public records lawsuit and a potential criminal complaint to avoid giving us answers, but we do demand urgent and immediate response on this matter. Your silence would just be a very weak attempt at dodging responsibility for the election board's actions. You have a choice to be accountable and transparent, and that's all we're asking for. We pay your salaries. We should not have to beg for free and fair elections. So we want simple answers to simple questions today, none of which, I'll say it again, is the subject of litigation in the Superior Courts. Our questions are you aware of our election board's written admission to violating chain of custody rules and laws for both the 2020 and 2021 elections? I brought copies of their emails for reference, even though I sent them to you already. Are you aware that Title 52, which is federal law, dictates that all election records be retained and preserved for 22 months from the date of any presidential election. Are you also aware that Title 52 states that any officer of election or custodian who willfully fails to comply with this section should be fined $1,000 or imprisoned for not more than a year, or both? Are you also aware that the New Jersey Treasury Department's retention rule for the gubernatorial election, this past election, for those records, it's 2 years? Are you aware of your duty to ensure that our election board adheres by all state rules and federal election laws? Do you understand that if they do not, it is your responsibility to hold them accountable? And do you plan to investigate these matters and hold the election board accountable? When and how? Thank you.
Well, I'm not sure. I'm not trying to hide behind any legal thing, but I'm not sure how much we can answer. And I know that our county council will say that if any part of that is under litigation, we cannot comment on, that we cannot do. So if there's a particular question, I'm not sure exactly what ones are under the litigation, because I have no problem answering anything. I just want to make sure that we're going to be answering without having a problem with the litigation. That's the only reason I'm asking our counsel.
I don't know how you parse certain things from the litigation. There is pending litigation involving the election board and involving the allegations that they're not following state law, federal law. That's pending before a judge. And my recommendation to you would be, just like any other case, if it's in litigation, let the court take its course, let the court make its decision, and I would refrain from any comment.
So this is my litigation. Again, it is a public records lawsuit. We are negotiating the fee. And again, these allegations of criminality are not included in that. This is obviously separate. This was revealed throughout the process of going through requesting the records. I have not filed a criminal complaint. To my knowledge, no other criminal complaints have been filed. So I disagree that this is not the subject of the litigation.
Well, I understand that you're saying that they've committed a criminal. Well, this is something that we would have to then investigate, I would imagine, to find out exactly. I don't know if Mr. Block has anything.
Director, if I could just start with a couple things.
I know he's had conversations.
Yeah, start with the Board of Election. Board of Election, actually, on election matters, is answerable to the state and not to the county. They are commissioners, 2 Republican, 2 Democrat, appointed by the governor. And the only reason the county currently is involved in your record request is that typically legal advice for election matters is given by the Deputy Attorney General. However, when the Board of Elections asked for direction on your request, they were told by the Attorney General's office that they don't do OPRA requests. Therefore, we had to send that to the county council. So, in the general overskip, when you talk about the board putting them under the microscope, if you will, for election decisions, it is the state they answer to, State Division of Elections. The OPRA came here because they refused to do so. My understanding is also that you have been in communication, as I have, with the Board of Election supervisors. There's 2 of them. One is, unfortunately, on vacation. The other, hopefully, is here. And that you would ask for other records, which they have produced.
Correct.
They have produced logs and chain of custody, and I got a matter of fact, when I had my secretary put together a box of it, it's the whole box full of stuff over here. So my understanding is that the only, and you can correct us if I'm wrong, I'll stand corrected, and please, I would love to know that, that the only thing in dispute is the videos. Correct. But everything else has been answered.
Correct.
So from a matter of transparency, everything's been given to you but the video.
Correct.
Okay. Now, the videos, and the $4,000, so I'll be back and explain. When the state changed the law last year, in 2020, they added, first by executive order, then by statutory change, as you remember, last year, 2020, was an all-mail election. And they came up with this idea of the mailboxes. We then were mandated to put at least 17 of them in. And we were mandated to put the cameras on them. We were mandated to record it. Great. This year, it was not all mail-in election, but they decided to have early voting and added 2 boxes, so we're up to 19 now. Fine, we follow the law, we're not allowed to do that. So as we went along, the direction up to that point was clear, whether we agreed with it or not, whether we thought that was a good choice or not. I personally didn't like the all mail-in election last year, and I'm a former county official, county election official, county clerk. I thought it was a wrong decision. You know what? I'm not the guy. They gave no direction in the changes, either in the executive order or the statutory changes, what to do once the election was over. So there was no, with all due respect, there was no state retention schedule outlined in those changes. So the best you could do is fall back on and say, okay, well, let's treat it as an OPRA request, use the general OPRA criteria, at which point, that's why at the opening of your hearing, the judge said, well, the county's not disputing, you can have them, but OPRA does permit that a escrow be established, that the cost of anything other than a typical email or whatever would allow to be charged, whatever the cost was to taxpayers would be charged to the applicant, anything unused would be returned. That's where the discussion can't go any further because it is a litigation, but you're at that point, and at the hearing on the February 4th, I believe will resolve that.
I do just want to state for the record, though, the election board was not willing to produce the records. In fact, they said it posed multiple security risks. They said that,
That was their first response. That was not the response during the hearing. I don't believe, again, correct me if I'm wrong. At the hearing, you were told that they were available
yes,
and had
and
to be
there was a
escrow.
resolution.
As a matter of fact, I think at the hearing, which was done by computer, not in person,
Correct.
my understanding is that you agreed to that, but later sent an email which said, even though I agreed to it, that $4,000 is too high.
Yes, I'm not an IT expert, so I
Yeah.
don't know what the cost of
Agreed.
something like that.
And neither am I. So we're on the same page here. My understanding from our IT department is that the amount of information to be extracted, to be given to you, which there's no problem with doing, is somewhere just shy of 2 terabytes, which is a significant amount of data to download. They have merely worked up what the cost would be between the time to go and put that onto a device which they then can give to you. Now, video takes a lot of space, and that's why it's a lot of time. You've actually timed each camera, each device, because there's now 19 of them, and there are separate systems. They are in the library system as well as our system, because the state moved so quick, there was no way of keeping up with the speed the state was demanding without trying to get things organized as fast as we could. Therefore, they're going to have to go off-site to some servers, go on-site to some servers. It will take some time. But frankly, again, I'm not the attorney or the judge, but whatever the judge says, I'm sure the county commissioners are willing to do. So it is not something with any opposition to. The law did fail us here, though, because there was, it wouldn't even rise to this level. An OPRA request doesn't come to county commissioners, typically, because why should it? The law, here is what you're allowed to do and not do. And if there is a dispute, you go to appeal to the Records Council, where they then adjudicate it.
I don't think ever in the history of the state there was ever a 30-day retention rule for election records, though. I mean, either way, I was told that it was 30 days in writing for both elections, and I don't know where that information was coming from. So that's the issue that we have to address, because
Well, I don't, the initial response from you, I did not know of or hear of until after it was over. So, take it from, ask that for. The other thing is that at Title 52, I think you referred to. I believe it's a federal statute, and in questioning county council, they're telling me that there are many documents and papers covered by Title 42 in the federal statute. But the videos of the Dropboxes isn't one of them. So if it's not covered by the title, then it can't be a violation of it. But again, doesn't matter. for 2021, we had the videos, they're here. And a retention didn't need, doesn't matter if you got a restraining order to get one, because there was no one to get rid of it. I think that's as far as we could go, then we've answered everything else. And I think that as a former election official, we want everyone to have confidence in the election results. And sometimes it's not necessarily an OPRA request, but maybe a question, well, how do you do this? Why does it come out that way? It would have no problem, I'm sure the commissioners will not, set up a meeting with some board of elections folks to explain, or myself or someone, explain what is the process, what happens. I think there was a comment you made at one point, the ballots were counted faster this year than last year. Oh, that's because last year there was almost 500,000 of them, and this year there was not even 80,000. So obviously they were done a lot quicker. Number two, there was more scanners available this year because we bought more, so it would not affect the speed. And again, this goes to commissioners, particularly the deputy director, Commissioner Haynes, is supporting. She's a liaison to the board of elections, and she wants to make sure they have everything they need to effectuate a fair and safe election.
I do just want to clarify, it was reverse. I said last year that they had counted them so early, and I have multiple eyewitnesses saying that Frank Coleman was attempting to close the polls early in my town, in Brick, because he already knew who the winner was. But then this year, we had however many extra days in my town. It might have been 2
close
days.
the polls early. The
after.
law is the law.
I'm saying this is what people witnessed when they were working the polls, is what he was saying. So at the end of the day, we have all
You're
convened
talking
here
about the
because there is,
2021 election that he tried?
that was 2020.
We did not have people at the polls. The only people that would have been at polls, there was only a small amount of
Provisional.
people, and it was few machines that were used, and it was only those that were handicapped.
And there were
And
still workers who witnessed that. I
No, I'm
spoke
not
with
saying,
them.
but I'm just saying you can't close the poll, whether he tried to or not, you cannot close the polls early.
No, I know.
It has to go till 8 o'clock.
That's why it's
And-
alarming to
Exactly,
hear
no,
that
it did
testimony
not.
from
And there were
multiple sources.
445,000 ballots mailed in 2020. And what we had to do, we had to hire, I don't even, we had National Guard come in to help us do the ballots because we had so many, and that was just opening them as well as scanning them and just getting to do the process. Because it did take a long time to do it and all the extra staff. It took 3 weeks, 2 shifts a day. It was 21 days for them to just stuff the ballots and mail them, to get them ready to go to the mail. That was just to get it to send to the people in 20. And then when we received them, we were getting them, and when you're saying we send out 445,000, which normally if we send out 50 or 60,000 for mail-in would be a lot. So there was a big difference, so in 2020. But if that was the case, as I said, you cannot change the election law. The election law is 8 p.m., it's 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., and that's what it is. If he tried to do that, he was wrong. He can't do it, so I don't see how he could go around saying that. But I wasn't there, so I can't comment on that. But as you know, that is not the law, that you have to keep the polls open till 8 o'clock. Anyone that is in the polling place at 8 o'clock, even if it goes to after 8 o'clock, they have to be allowed to vote. You can't come in after 8 o'clock to vote, but if you're in that polling place, you can stay in there and you can vote, even if they have a line of 100 people in a polling place. They all have to give that right to vote, and that's when that polling place was closed. So I can't answer for what Mr. Holman may or may not have said, because I wasn't a witness to it, but the law is the law, and we would definitely follow that law.
And Director, if I could add one more thing to the county of Harlem. The state, because of the volume that the Director just mentioned, the state allowed the board of elections to start counting them earlier. So if someone said, oh, they started counting them earlier, yeah, they did. Because the state said there's so many of them, and they'll never be able to get them done in time, they authorized the counties to start counting ballots sooner than they would, which is, we can't start doing counting until election day. But they allowed them to be opened and processed and so forth earlier because it was going by election, which is why I didn't agree with it myself, because it causes all these ripple changes. But that was what was done.
That was
and
just
he
the
said, talking about
2020.
later, there are ballots, this year, there were ballots because they changed law also,
Yeah.
that you can receive a ballot, the board of elections can receive it and count it days after, as long as it's postmarked by the day of election.
Yeah.
The old law was, it It had to be in the possession of the Board of Elections by 8 p.m. on election day, period.
The governor
Done.
changed the
That's
law.
it. And that, as the director was mentioning. However, this year they changed it. And you can receive it later as long as it's postmarked before.
Up to a week
The
after
Board of
the
Election
election.
was receiving ballots up to November 5th, which were days after the election. They still hadn't counted. So
So
they
is
were
there any
changing the
surprise
law.
that we have such a turnout today? There's a lot of inconsistencies with some of the policies regarding our
A lot of
elections,
it
and that's what we're,
I understand that, and a lot of it, as you can see, was things that came down from Trenton. It was not any of our doing, because if, I would not have had a mail-in ballot. I think it was, I like going to the polls myself. I don't like mail-in. I'd rather go and use the machine. But what the governor did, he did an executive order, and he just said it was gonna be mail-in for 2020. And in 2021, he did early voting. It was the first time we did early voting. We did not have as many people go for early voting as I think they thought was going to happen in the state of New Jersey. We did have a majority of people go to the polls on election day, and we did not have as many people do as we had in the previous years to do mail-in ballot. A lot of times we get mail-in ballots of people that are usually gonna be away. There's a lot of people that go to Florida for the winter, that type of thing, or they're gonna be out of town on that particular day. But with the governor and the legislature changing the laws on us, as it was very quickly handed down, as Mr. Block had stated, the different laws that came down, and some of them really weren't fully thought about when they did it. Having been in the legislature, I know that many times when they do a piece of legislation, there's a lot of things that we think we've covered everything, and then they end up not covering it all, and then you don't find out until after the fact that, well, we should have included this. Well, they need to amend many of the election laws that were put down, and that's one thing that the New Jersey legislature has done, and has to do as well as that the governor has to sign that legislation in order for it, because there was a lot of, I felt, inconsistencies that I did not feel was proper or correct that they should have been doing. But I was only one person, and there's a lot more in the legislature than you have the governor that has to handle those things, so that's where it comes from.
so what kind of reassurance can you provide, myself and the people who I've invited to this meeting today, that this will be confirmed, it will be looked into? Again, I have looked on the Treasury Department's website. There is a record retention rule. It definitely does not say 30 days, so
Will you send you
where
have
can we-
copies for us?
Yeah, yeah.
You'll make sure that we have those copies, each one of us, we will make sure that it is all looked into, and get back to you, or as long as we have your phone number and everything,
Yeah.
we will get back to you with regards to that.
Okay.
That's not a problem.
Thank you all for your time.
You're quite welcome.